Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm eating my dinner, I'm afraid. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm drinking my wine.
Oh, I'm doing that as well.
Happy to be on TV.
I'm having a disaster because all my leaves, which are carefully unwrapped from the kitchen paper they've been in for about 5 days, they're all curling again.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Same here. Yeah.
Oh, so it's not just me being incompetent then, I'm so glad.
Yeah.
it's kind of an impossible thing to try. Ideally, we all need to have gone out about 10 minutes ago and picked lots of leaves.
I could hardly find any with lovely colour though. They were all
They've gone over a bit, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a little mini arboretum in our garden.
Yeah.
And
Not doing any chats.
and all of the leaves, I mean, we've got so many trees and so many rare trees, and there's none of them that have got beautiful like reds and purples and stuff. They're all just brown.
As you say somewhere in your instructions, you can do what we like.
Yeah, well, there's so many options tonight, and I have to give lots of options because people's circumstances at the moment. Some people can't get out, some people don't have trees around them, some people are working all day, and then so it's really tricky. So I'm trying to just sort of cover all bases, really.
Yeah.
All right, Gareth? Yeah. I'm just delay tacticking, just making sure that we've got everybody. Yeah.
I've put my leaves in the paper press. You know, the book press.
Did that work?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
I pressed mine in between Mary Berry and Rick Stein in like a little menage a trois.
They'll taste delicious.
Okay, so whilst I don't know if there's anybody else coming in, but I'll just do a bit of housekeeping just to start off. So let me Paul, hang on a moment. Gav, can you record? Well, you are? Yeah, okay. Right, so if I can ask you all to mute your microphones, please. And if you've got any technical questions or technical issues, please pop them in the chat box at the bottom. And Boris has got his chief medical advisor. I've got my chief technical advisor, Glamorous Gav, and he's going to help you if you get locked out or if you've got any technical problems. If you've got any questions about the techniques that I'm doing, or if I've left a crucial bit of information out, just unmute your microphone and ask the question as we're going along. It's really useful to have people asking questions. So many of you are so many different abilities. Lots of you are brand new to sketchbooking and art in general. Lots of you have got loads of experience. So we've got a really nice mixture of people, and it's great to ask the question because I can answer your question hopefully, but there's probably lots of other people that can too. So if you've got anything interesting to chip in, please feel free to do that. Lots of people have bought this as a video as well, so even questions that pop into your head, it's really useful to have them asked because there'll be other people there who are keen to know as well. So yeah, please don't feel scared. Even if you think it's a silly question, it might be that I've just overlooked it. I try and state the obvious, but if I've forgotten something, give me a shout. So how this will work this evening is that we've got loads to cover tonight. Last week was quite a simple little class and everybody worked along with me. But this evening there's loads to cover. So I'm gonna probably rattle through it quite quickly, and that might be a bit too quick for you, but please know that you'll get this video sent to you tomorrow, so you can go over bits that you are interested in or that you didn't pick up on. So don't feel like you've got to rush through tonight, just enjoy the session. We're doing loads of different techniques. It might be that you just love doing one of them and are happy to reject the rest. So it's about a process of discovery, really, and that's what sketchbooking is all about. It's a set of small experiments. It shouldn't be scary. So I look at my sketchbook as a workbook and a place to find things out. So if things go a little bit wrong, I don't mind, because I can just write little notes on the side. I've always got little colour mixes on the side of my sketchbook. It's a place where I figure stuff out. It's a learning tool. And you'll find tonight that you'll be doing lots of new stuff that you haven't done before, and it might not go to plan, which is really good because it's another way of learning. And the upside is that you might have some results that are really exciting, and if you hadn't have tried them, you wouldn't have known. So let's get started. So yeah, please just do feel free to do what you want tonight. You probably won't do your best work this evening because you're just going to be testing stuff out. Right, so we're going to start with drawing options. So how to get the shape of your leaf on a piece of paper. And there's loads of different ways. Last week we looked at tracing. I'm not going to go over that fully this evening, but what you would do is pop a piece of tracing paper over an image of a leaf. So that might be a leaf in a book that you've found. You can do it over an actual leaf as well, and then flip the tracing paper and rub the image, and the shape of the leaf will come out onto your paper. So that's like the big cheat, that's the super cheat. Second cheat is, and this is why I wanted you to press your leaves, is to take your flat leaf, pop it onto your paper. Sorry, you've gone a bit out of focus. There we go, it's a bit better, isn't it? Pop it on your paper, and with a pencil, anchor it down, and with a pencil, trace around the shape. So I'm going to do that now, but I'm going to just trace around it with a bit of a dotted line. I'm not going in on any detail. I'm just getting a basic shape, and I'm not taking too long about it. So if you've got a leaf that's really intricate, this is a really good way of transferring the image.
Lucia, really quick question. Sorry, there are the most amazing imprints in my kitchen paper. I was wondering how I could use those.
I'll show you in a minute, Lou.
Okay.
I know, they're brilliant for
Yep, incredible
colour. Are they leafy?
Yes, and they've got the veins and everything.
Perfect. Yeah, we're going to be doing a little bit of that, a little bit of leaf printing a bit later on. Okay, so when I take that leaf away, I've got that basic shape. Sorry, my camera's having a bit of trouble focusing tonight. And it means that if you want to with a pencil, you can just, I mean, if this was a very complicated shaped leaf where you've got lots of small points, I would have just gone around the basic shape and then added those tiny points in. I don't feel like this needs any more work with pencil, so I'm going to go then straight in with a fine liner pen. Now I've got a selection of fine liners, and they're all water resistant, so when I use them over a piece of art, it means that I can wash watercolor or any sort of paint over it, and they are complete. They're just going to stay there. They're really good, and they don't fade as well.
Yeah, Chili's from Spain. Oh, sorry.
So I would go for a nib size of about 0.2. Smaller the number. Gav, could you mute everybody, please? Yeah. The smaller the number, the smaller and finer the nib size. And for this, I like to use quite a small nib. I've got a really lovely version of a fine liner, which is a platinum carbon pen, which has just got cartridges in with waterproof ink. And I'm going to just go, looking at my leaf, I'm going to just go around the edge and shape of the leaf. And I'm not going to, do you remember last week with the birds, for those of you that came, I didn't fully go round the edge, blocking in the lines. I used quite an expressive line. I'm going to have another little go at this for the next leaf. So I'm not fully touching the lines, so I haven't got a really heavy block. This fine liner technique with watercolour looks really effective if you're doing more of a sketchy drawing rather than a botanical drawing. It looks more like an illustration. Because that's my bag, that's kind of, well, actually, even if I try to do like a proper drawing, it looks like an illustration. I don't quite know how that happens, but there we go. I love using fine liners. I love it that it's got a really satisfying amount of control. And if you're new to drawing or new to art, they're a great bit of kit to have in your toolbox because you can add really fine detail to a drawing with just that little tiny thin nib. So I'm half looking at my leaf, half looking at my drawing. I'm bringing in some of those smaller details that I can see. I'm not just blindly going around the edge of the leaf. There's some tiny little curves and bends. But the brilliant thing is that I've got this underdrawing, which means that the shape of the leaf is basically there. But I'm just sort of adding a few curves. Sorry, I should have said I'm doing this on a piece of paper. It's your choice whether you use a bit of paper or you're going in for your sketchbook. I would probably suggest just testing a few of these things out in your sketchbook first, and then go for making a little book afterwards when you've found a few techniques that you like. I'm just going to freehand add the stem and the veining, and again it's a dotted line, a slight longer line, but it's, if you feel like you want to do this with a pencil first, if your hand isn't steady enough, then please do. So these, the little veining structures are quite good for adding reference points when you're painting, so it can give you like little landmarks of where to put your paint. The brilliant thing about leaves is that they are actually reasonably easy to draw. If you're doing a human, if you're drawing a human, there's a lot you can do to stop that human looking humanish. Even if these leaves are a bit wonky, it doesn't matter. They'll be beautiful and expressive. So I haven't gone really crazy and really solid with the veining. I've been very gentle with that there. Right, so let's go just for another little option. So we've got a few more to go on. So that's from a real life leaf, but I'm aware that some of you haven't got actual leaves. So we're going to do the next stage, which you can do from your leaves. So you can draw directly from one of your leaves, but I've also got some references here for you as well. So let's just pop out. Okay. So this technique applies whether you're drawing from your reference sheet or from an actual leaf. So I'm going to go for this little one first. So those were the easy options: tracing from a flat image and then drawing round a flat image. Let's cover that one up. I'm just going to, this shaped leaf is one of the easiest types of leaf to do, and things like, you know, your kind of like common leaf shapes like this, they're really easy to do. They're mostly symmetrical-ish in shape, and then there's just a few little deviations. So what I'll always do with something like this is draw the stem first. Just as a line. And this is going to be really rough with a pencil. And then I'm going to just add to that stem, so I've got that main vein. And now I'm looking for the basic shape. So it's kind of, it's got a bit of a point there. Let's say that's where the leaf joins the stem. And it kind of goes out like that. Again, I've got my dotted lines again. I always use dotted lines, and very lightly. Actually, I'm going to press mine down a bit more just so that you can see it.
I was about to say, Lucia, we can't see that.
Let me just go down a bit more. There we go. So I'd go lighter than this, everybody, but and then that kind of goes a bit steeper there. Not bang on, but basically that's what I'm looking for. Then back in with the pencil, I've got my basic shape. So this is the equivalent of doing that draw round that we did to start with on this one. So with my pencil, I want to add a little bit more detail. If you're more confident with drawing at this stage, just go in with pen and look at those tiny little edges to the leaf and get them in. So I'm constantly looking backwards and forwards now. So I've got my little point there, and then that comes down. I'm sort of tracing the edge of the shape. But like I said, it doesn't have to be bang on if you've got some little bits. I'm not worrying too much. I'm just getting a basic shape, which is going to be enough for me to go over with my pen. So if you're looking for less of an illustratory look and you don't like the black pen line, just keeping it with pencil like this and adding more detail with pencil, that's absolutely fine. If you want to go a bit more expressive, then using things, water-soluble inks, so that when you put the water on, they're going to bleed into the paint. Or watercolour pencils can be interesting. So it could be, this could open up a set of experiments just with one subject area with leaves. So your sketchbook could just be full of little leaf experiments where you test out, you do one basic shape, but you test out lots of different techniques. So I've also, there's the veining on there. Some people draw that line first, add the veining, and then add the shape. but I get a bit confused that way, but that might be a way for you to do this. So just curving the lines into the center. So I've got my basic leaf shape now, and again, because I love my fine liner, I'm going to go in and the marks I'm going to use with my fine liner are a bit like this. They're like little sort of tiny dots and dashes. They're expressive lines. So again, I'm not going all the way around drawing a solid line. There are going to be little gaps in the line, and it just keeps the shape of the leaf really fresh. So there are points where there are quite solid lines, and usually at the end of these little points there are. This mark making technique is perfect for this type of leaf, and sometimes you just get something like that, that there's just it just adds to the expression and the feel of the leaf.
All the peaks on my leaf are pointing the wrong direction after my pencil. So can I use the pen to sort of change the direction?
To rectify it, yes, yeah.
Okay.
But it's good that you've noticed that, Lou.
Yeah, they're sticking out rather than towards the point like they are in the picture.
Brilliant that you've noticed that. But also, I think probably some of mine are as well. But, you know, I'm not a botanical artist, so there will be, I'm sure, lots of critics of my sketching technique. I'm never really looking for a major study. I'm not doing a scientific study. I'm only ever trying to, in all of my drawings, trying to capture the essence of something or the feel of something. And when you think of it like that, it really does take the pressure off doing, you know, a proper finished piece of art. And it means that you can add a bit of character and a bit of life into it and not worry if it goes a bit, if it's not 100% right. So if I pick this leaf up on my walk, it would really remind me of that walk. And to me, that's more important. I like to study it. I like to look and pay attention and learn from it, but I'm not going to be a slave to it because I've got other things to do. And the nice thing is that this leaf could be a great way of sketching a whole day. You know, you just pick one item up and it tells the story of a whole day. And if you are a journaler like me, I want lots of work done for me. So I quite often choose one tiny object that tells the story of my day. Sometimes it's things like a letterbox, or if I've been on a walk or I've been to a new city. That doesn't happen anymore. But something that I've seen. So let's got a few more going on. Okay, so I'm done with that one. I'm just going to show you one more, just a slightly different drawing technique. I like to use loads of different drawing techniques when I'm drawing, and sometimes the shape of something requires you to draw it in a different way. So for instance, if you've got a more complicated leaf like this and you want to draw it freehand, I'm just going to go up a bit. There we go. I would look, so you can look at the basic shape there, but also the little skeletal structure for these more complicated leaves can be really helpful. So I'm going to just really loosely sketch that main vein in that goes to the stem, make a little mark where the leaf joins the stem. bring it down. So that's my main stem there. So then I've got another one branching off here. Let's get that in. I've got another vein branching off
Sorry,
there.
can you press a little bit harder?
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
No, that's all right, because I'm looking at what I'm drawing and I'm not looking at the screen.
Thank you.
I suppose it's good in a way because you can see how light I normally press, which is I almost can't see it. So I've got those three main structures in there. And then from there, I can sort of plan out where that little middle part is. Look, so it sort of goes down to there. So I'm just going to sort of put that there. And just really loosely, again, this is the same as our drawing round the leaf. Sort of just get a basic guide shape in that's going to allow me some freedom to then sketch the base bit there, to sketch a bit more freely once I've got this bit in. Oh, I'm going to go into, oh no, I'm going to bump into that leaf. That wasn't very well planned. We might have to have a nice little overlap. Could be arty. Ooh, could paint them both at the same time and then they'll bleed into each other. See, this is what I mean about, so I'm always doing stuff like this, not really thinking things through, but potentially it could be exciting. And then somebody will look at that leaf and go, oh, I really love the way that you've bumped those two leaves into each other. There we go. So I've got my basic shape there again. And I'll just be doing the same thing. Going over. So again, you could do this with a pencil. In fact, I'll just do that the sort of slightly more detailed bits with a pencil. So this is the bit that I really love. I don't like doing this big shape. I find it quite dull. But then when I look at all the tiny little shapes and structures, that's when I really get to know the thing that I'm drawing. I'm reading a really lovely book at the moment called The Art of Noticing, and it's full of exercises on how to pay attention to things. And one of the exercises is to look at something for a long time. So you sit and you just look at something. So you could go into an art gallery and look at a painting and actually sit there and look and think, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes and look. And I thought as I was reading it that really as artists, that's what we do when we do something like this. We're looking really hard and we're really paying attention. And it does illuminate your life. You do find that it becomes a bit like a meditation. So I'm going to just slightly change this. I can see when looking at this shape, I've done it slightly wrong in my big, that's all right. Gone a bit wide. Yeah, but it's a really lovely book, and I think for something like a boring old lockdown, where you might be doing the same walk, to use one of the exercises from the book and collect images or collect objects and learn how to notice and see them better is really makes it a little bit more exciting, because there's not many exciting things going on, is there? Gosh, I've gone way out of that one. This certainly is a nice occupation. You could really turn this into a nice project. If you like making little books, you could do a leaf a day. So every walk that you go on, you could collect a leaf and just illustrate it. And then after 7 days, you'd have a really pretty little sketchbook full of stuff, full of nice stuff. So just going to go back in with my pen. Using some more expressive gestures. Again, I'm remembering not to create a really solid line. The other downside of pressing the leaves is that their colour goes, which is a real shame that you can't, you almost need to sort of press them, photograph them and then press them, which is why we've also got images. The images referencing system that I've been doing is working really well over the lockdown, because it's really hard to have sometimes for everybody to get all the bits and pieces that I request. It can sometimes be hard to get the stuff printed out. I know. I find that difficult because I haven't got a colour printer. When you're doing it with a pen, I love it when you've got some of those leaves that we've got some quite nice perfecty leaves here. But those leaves that have got tiny little notches out of them, like they've been nibbled away with mice, little holes in them. So it's making sure that with your pen, you add all those bits in. I'm just going to add my veining in, and then we'll get on and do a little bit of painting. It might be that you choose as your option that you don't paint. Maybe you have some painted leaves and then you have some line drawn leaves. That can look really beautiful. If you just like drawing and you don't like painting, then you could just enjoy the process of drawing them. Last week, we did the little birds, and we made our drawings look a bit like etchings by adding sort of wonky etched lines, and so that can be a really nice effect to add, especially if you've got bits that they've gone a bit wrong on your drawings. So you can add like extra little lines to make it look like it was meant to be like that. It's always good to have a hack. So I'm drawing these line structures in. I'm looking at the image and making some mental notes of sort of areas of colour, and those little lines are going to help me out when I come to paint this. Okay, so I think that's about all I want to do on that one. Sometimes when I'm doing these pen and ink drawings, when I've got sort of darker areas like this, little spottings on a leaf, I might use my pen to add those dark parts in, and then I don't need to worry about sort of adding them in with paint. In fact, I might add a few in, and then I can show you how we do it with paint as well. So some of the areas of tips have got dark bits in. So this is just one option. So it's very, very doable and looks nice with paint. But if you were doing a very quick sketch and you didn't have time to paint it, it would be quite nice to add the dark tones in as a sort of a little reference. But with, you know, like I said, I'm a sketcher, so I'm always looking for the sort of the easy way of getting things down. I don't have a massive amount of time either, so I'm looking for quick options. Okay, so once you've done these little designs, you've obviously still got the pencil underneath. And if you put any sort of paint on top and you can still see the pencil, it's then really hard to rub out. So once your ink's dry, which doesn't take very long with these pens, you just need to put a rubber over it and rub out any pencil lines that you don't want seen. And then it's quite nice because it sort of magically reveals itself and it looks like you've just drawn it in pen. So it's a really good little hack for if you're, well, most people are not very confident drawing straight away in pen. I'm always happy to make a mess, so I'm happy to just go in and try something and have the mistake to be part of the drawing. I feel like I've got to that stage now where I quite like to have that honesty. But, and it depends how messy you are. We talk quite a lot about this in Sketchbook Club, about how your art really becomes an extension of your personality. And so if you're a person that likes neat work, then it might be that if you're a neat person, basically, your art quite possibly is neat. I'm messy and quite disorganized, so generally that's reflected in my work and my workspace. I get too excited about, and then I just can't be bothered to do the tidying up bits. There we go, that'll do. I'm just going to quickly draw one more leaf, just very briefly, just so that I've got another reference. I'll do the drawing around technique. And I'm just, because this is the other thing, if you're doing it on a piece of paper that you're going to fold into a book, just constantly turning it. So I've done those all in a row, but constantly turning the paper and adding the leaves in different directions will be a good tip. I was going to say that at the end, but so I'll just quickly get this little leaf on. Gav, could you shut the door, please? So these oak leaves are really easy to do. They're actually, I think, quite a hard leaf to draw in terms of getting the shape right. You have to look really carefully. So it's always good to have a cheat with the tricky ones. maybe those sort of maple leaves as well. So we always embrace any kind of cheat here if it enables you to make the work and not be worried about getting a little piece of art down, really. I also really love art like this, which is what I call it elemental art, where there are lots and lots of tiny elements, because you can break up those elements and just use one of them. So you could have a little card to somebody and just draw one leaf on it. You could do one leaf in the middle of a sketchbook page and that would just look beautiful. But you can also, with this term elemental art, you can take lots of one element, so lots of one item, and group them together and create these beautiful spreads. So it means that if you're nervous, just drawing one leaf isn't too much. Maybe doing a whole page seems like it's loads, but actually if you break it down into all the little elements and you just look at it as one leaf at a time, then it doesn't seem quite so daunting. But equally, you could just do one leaf. Okay. So we've got now our little structures. These are a brilliant skeleton for us to now add a bit of colour. So the first thing I'm going to show you, again, we started easy, so tracing and drawing round. So I'm going to show you the easy colour options. Now, one of them is more expressive than others. And I'm just going to show you a little example of it because it's a really hard one to show you on film when you've got dry leaves. So you probably will find that you need to do this with, sorry, this is a little book. You probably need to do this with leaves that you've just gathered. So this is a little tiny book that I made last year as an example from the class, and we were just playing with watercolor and leaves. It makes a big long concertina. Oh no, it doesn't. It's a folded book like the one we're doing today. And it is just printed watercolor leaves that told the story of a really muddy walk. Well, I'm going to show you the little cutting technique at the end. And like I said, this might be difficult for you to do if you've got dry leaves. It really doesn't work very well at all, but I'll show you what you just generally do. It's another way of recording your story. Pardon? Okay, so just choosing any colour watercolour. You could go crazy and use any colour you like. I'm just making the watercolour really, really wet. So you need lots and lots of pigment.
Lucy, are you saying leaves you've just collected because you don't want them to be absorbent? Because that looks like a rose leaf that's just come off the bush.
It literally has, yeah. So they can be crispy leaves. The reason I'm saying this is because I tried it just before the session with dry leaves that I pressed. So this is part of an experiment, me doing this right now. The dry leaf didn't seem to hold on to the paint so well, but it definitely could be part of your experiment to test this out. So I literally ran out the door after I tried this and grabbed another leaf. So this hasn't been pressed.
I've got an ivy leaf, I'll join you.
Yeah, well, have a go. So, but you need lots and lots of watercolor on it, but it's got to have lots of pigment in it. And this is proper primary school stuff, but I don't think they use professional grade watercolours to abuse in such a way. But you need quite a lot of paint on it. It's very messy. You're not going to get a very precise, actually, and I'm covered in paint now as well. Oh, I dropped that one. Hold it down. Try not to move it around too much and press every tiny little part of it. You can use the back of a brush. You want to get every ounce of paint off of it. This is just another option of adding to your sketchbook, another way of recording it. And then when it comes up, it's not particularly promising at all. But what you can do is use more paint and just touch the leaf with more little bits of other paint. As this dries, the pigments, the water will evaporate and the pigments will start to merge with each other. So I could just stick a bit of green in there as well, as it was a green leaf. As I say, this is much more experimental. And what you could do, Lou, with your bit of kitchen roll, when you've got, do a couple of these and print your kitchen roll straight on top, and it will just, like, it will imprint a leaf on a leaf.
Oh, perfect. So put the pigment on the page and then get the kitchen paper down.
Yeah. So I'll do that here. I don't think I've got any really fancy schmanz Waitrose Finest leaf kitchen roll like you, Lou. Not quite as posh, but I have got Tesco Value, and it's got like a kind of swirly pattern on. So if you then just if you wanted to get an effect, put your paper right down, press, don't move it, and then lift it off. You'll get, I don't know if you can see it, but can you see the tiny little dots that are left over? So it should take the majority of the watercolor off. If you allow it to dry a little bit, it will take less off and you'll get more of an imprint. So I don't know if it's going to work with this one because it's still quite wet.
The imprint was homemade from the leaves. I just saw
really?
it when I was unwrapping them. Yeah, it's not on the paper originally.
Oh, well, in which case, it's almost like an eco dye then, that it's the colour has literally sucked its way into your kitchen roll.
Yeah.
So perhaps you just cut them out and stick them in then, like little tissue leaves. That would
Well, now I'm searching for one. I think they were a little bit damp before, which is why my leaves were curling, and now the imprints seem to have vanished.
Oh. Well, it does also, I found when I was doing this one, it does depend on the type of leaves you're using if you do this leaf printing. So they do need quite a strong vein on them and if you then, once they're dry, you can add more veins onto them. So it's up to you. I'm aware whenever I do these classes, like I said, that we've got such a huge variety of artists. And I know that there's some very people that like very detailed work, but there's also lots of you who really love to have a go at experiments and really messy stuff. So perhaps experimenting with different types of leaves, different veining and watercolour. So that's the point. We've all done leaf printing before with sort of stodgy school paints, but watercolour is so beautiful in the way that it mixes and merges. So this one already, I wasn't interested in before, but because I dropped a little bit of colour in, I'm starting to become much more interested in how that's drying. It doesn't make it any less of a piece of art because it's not a polished, fine leaf. It still tells the story of the walk. So that could, making a little book like that could be another thing to do. Okay, so that's something to have a play with. But let's have a go now at actually that was one option one really easy. Option 2 is also really easy. And I did say to some of you, well, I said on the list to have gouache. And I'm aware that some of you have got gouache, some of you have got watercolour. So I'm just touching all bases and showing you all the different techniques. But gouache, I think, is the much easier way of painting leaves. I think the effect is a bit less beautiful, but I do it in, again, a very sort of rushed, cheaty way. So just for those of you who are beginners, gouache is very much like watercolour, but it's thicker and chalkier. It works in the same way in that it's water-based, and it's not like acrylic. It doesn't go plasticky. It stays very chalky, and it's not transparent. Well, it can be if you add loads and loads of water to it. But unlike watercolour, it's much more solid. So again, you get a much more illustrative look. It usually comes in tubes like this. I have seen pans of gouache. I like the Winsor & Newton Professional. This is a student grade gouache, and the whole box of it is at the same price as one tube of Winsor & Newton. So if you want to have a go and you're not going to, we use this quite a lot. So if you come regularly, it's worth buying something like sea white, so like a cheaper version if you don't want to spend out on the professional grade. So what I normally do for painting with gouache is just put a little tiny blob, just the size of a little pea. And it needs watering down with a bit of water, but you don't want it really runny like watercolour. Now I've got an example to show you in a minute of a very illustrative style of doing these leaves, which is also an easier option. I really do think that gouache is the easy one. I've chosen colours. So I'm just looking at this leaf, which is quite unexciting. Oh no, it's a bit better on that side. Sort of goldeny browns. I'm going to zhuzh it up a little bit. I've got a bit of yellow, a bit of brown, a little bit of orange, a bit of white as well. And I'm going to just sort of, can you see that I'm just picking up a few of those colours on my brush, and they're all on my brush together. I've added a little bit of water so it's not as stiff as it was when it came out the tube. And I'm just going to go in and really loosely paint what I would call a base colour. So I'm looking for what's called the mid-tone really of this leaf. So it's not the darkest bits, it's not the lightest bits. It's actually pretty all mid-tone, this leaf. It's quite dull. And every time I go back to reload a bit more paint, I'm picking up another bit of colour, a bit of white, a bit of yellow. And so instead of a really flat surface, I'm getting a sort of a variety of colours, and you can see the brush marks I'm making are quite dabby. So for the rest of this session, we're going to be working with watercolour, but I'm going to show you a little option at the end, which is much more illustrative than the formal watercolour. The great thing about gouache is that you could do a very formal painting with this in the same way that you would use oils or acrylics. But you can also do a lot of very cheaty stuff if you fancy it.
Sorry, Lucia, did you say that you're going to do this again with the watercolours, or?
I am. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm just quickly showing how to use the gouache.
Okay.
And then the rest of the session we're going to be doing leaves with watercolours. But this is a good little lesson in looking. So the same with the watercolours. we're looking for areas of the leaf that are, like I said, the middle tone, the medium tone colours. This is really important for watercolour. But for this, we've just gone a really flat, we've got a really, really flat tone on there. I know I've got a bit of a shine, so I'm just going to hold it up like that so you can see the effect of it without the sort of shining light. Otherwise I'm in complete darkness. But it's not ideal having a light above you when you're doing watercolours, because you obviously get a shine. But you can see it's a very sort of textured look to it. Very
your pen lines have disappeared.
I have for this one, yeah.
Got less water in it than I have. I can still see my pen. Will your pen come back again, or is it gone now? All your
No, this is gone for gouache. For the watercolour, it's gonna, you'll see it all because it's complete. This is completely opaque, so it covers up everything. For the watercolour, we'll see the pen underneath. So I'm just doing this for the folks that really want to work in gouache.
Thank you.
So I've got my gouache. This would be stage 1, and I would let that dry completely. I'm going to put this aside because in true Blue Peter fashion, I've got one I've done earlier. Of the same leaf. So here it is, all dry. And as you can see, it's not got any, I mean, it's got a little bit of life to it in that there's a bit of colour, but not much. And I'm gonna, this is my cheat with the gouache, is that I then go in, I've got some really lovely oily pencils. You can use watercolour pencils, they need to be really good quality. And then over the top, I can just see, you probably can't, but I can just see some of my lines. I'm just going to add in some of those details. Now, the brilliant thing about this, so this is why this is the easy option, is that I've literally, you could see how quickly I painted that gouache leaf. If you are a worried painter and you're not confident with a brush, to have a lot of the responsibility left for the finishing work in pencil is a really nice thing. You've got a lot more control over a pencil than you have with a brush. Sorry, we'll just go down so you can see the lines a bit better. So you can see I'm just drawing those lines in, but can you see where I've got the darker areas in this leaf? I'm going to use my pencil to add those darker tones. So when we're doing watercolour, we're going to add those with the paint, but as a great little cheat, you can, this is what I'm doing. I'm adding pressure like that. And then I'm slowly releasing the pressure. So this is like a big example of what I'm doing very minutely. So can you see that the pressure then reduces? So I'm just looking, I'm adding the dark areas just with pencil, doing a bit of shading. Now my regulars who have been coming to Sketchbook Club for years and years adore doing gouache work when they know they've got a piece of sketchbooking they've got to do where they've just can put down a layer of gouache and then spend the rest of the evening or afternoon with a box of pencils, just doing a little bit of colouring in and looking carefully at their subject, but adding all of the details and the dark tones with pencils.
Alicia, I like the shade that you've put behind it. Is that gouache as well, or is that a bit of watercolour? The shade of the leaf.
Oh yes, that was a demo that I did earlier on the shadow. I'm going to show you that in a minute. Okay. So don't worry.
And what pencils are you using? Are you using watercolour pencils or?
I sometimes do use watercolour pencils for this. I currently have got some Prismacolor pencils, and they are oil. They're pigment that's mixed with oil. They're a really, really good quality pencil, which is you do pay much more for a really good colouring pencil, I think it's worth it. You can buy Prismacolor pencils, good quality watercolour pencils in smaller tins. So obviously the more you buy, the more expensive it is. But I think you actually only need 12 or 24. Watercolour, good quality, expensive watercolour pencils do the same job and then a double job because you can use them as watercolour pencils. I'll put some other brands in the email when I send you the link for the with the video in, because there's quite a few brands that I use. I've got masses of different types of pencils and I can recommend them all. I can't recommend any of the other ones that I don't use, but I know there's loads of really good ones out there. I've never had the same effect that I get with more expensive pencils with sort of cheaper ones that you might get from WH Smith's. So whereas I think buying a few cheaper bits is fine and going budget, if you want a lovely effect and you think you're going to use pencils a lot, it's a nice treat. It's a lovely Christmas present. And my tins of pencils I've had for years and years, and they just keep going. I've still got a box of pencils that I got for my 18th birthday.
I've got Caran d'Ache watercolour pencils. They
Oh,
don't
brilliant.
look like yours, but I got them over 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't seem to get the same result you do. And I don't know if that's the pencil or me.
It might have just gone a little bit hard. I mean, these ones are very buttery, so it literally is, you know, that I'm sure some of you have written with lipstick on a mirror, but this literally is like it's like drawing with lipstick. It's that soft and lovely. So the only annoying thing is that they're very hard to sharpen. So I'm not going to go in and do all the detail on this one, but I just wanted to show you how you don't need to rely on the brush if that's not your bag. You can obviously put that very sort of loose mixy wash down that's lovely and thick, and then enjoy adding detail with a pencil. You could really go in with the veining, doing loads of really interesting shading. Depends on what colours you've got, but you know, if you wanted to add greens and reds, this would be a really beautiful base on which to work with your watercolours, with your pencils. Really, this is another whole session, but I thought it was really worth adding in because one of the examples that I was going to show you is done all with gouache. So before we start the watercolour, I'll just show you that now and talk you through it. Where is it? There it is. So we were looking at say proper exact photographs of actual leaves. But one of the examples that I gave you had illustrations on. And these are nice to do in watercolour, but using that gouache technique, this sheet, if you want to use this as a reference, drawing those shapes in, painting them with gouache, and then using pencils to bring in the shading and the detail is very effective. So that's how I did this little book. So this is all done with gouache. So it's got a much thicker look to it. And you can get sort of, you know, much more illustrative little berries. You can add highlights afterwards. So it's very cheaty. And then you can see all the little bits that I've done with pencil here. So no brushes involved when there's little tiny fine lines. So that's how we can fold our books up, which I'll show you a bit later. So it then just becomes a little mixture of random objects. Okay, right, so on to the watercolour then, everybody. Right, so I'm just grabbing my examples. And I'm going to start with, we'll go back to this little leaf here. Now the thing to remember with watercolour is that you are always working from the lightest colour to the darkest colour. So the lightest colour is always the one you put down first. When I'm painting most of my subjects, I do it in 3 layers. The first layer is always the sort of messy, free, mucky layer where I can add lots of colours and lots of splashes. The next layer, so that will be this sort of yellowy colour. The next layer becomes much more, a little bit more refined. And then the next layer, I'm adding tiny more little details. So it's kind of getting less and less and less and finer. So that's what I'm going to be showing you now. Right, so looking at this leaf, the colour that I want underneath, the lightest colour is this yellow. So I think you've all got the reference of this. So that's the colour I'm going to be mixing up. You can paint leaves with 3 primary colours. That's all you need. I'm going to send you a little worksheet. It's downloadable on my website. And the primary colours, just a reminder, are yellow, blue and red. So as long as you've got yellow, blue and red, you can mix all these other colours. So most watercolour paints have got a variety of different yellows. So you can sort of pick and choose, and you can add one yellow to another yellow. So it's not the exact yellow out of the box, and then it looks slightly more complex than your work if you're not using the exact yellow. So just looking at, it's quite a nice bright yellow. I'm gonna go in with this one. The name of this for any watercolorists that are interested is Hansa Yellow. You can see it's very primary school, isn't it? Very bright. I might just add another one of my yellows, just so it's not the yellow out of the box. It's a little bit muckier.
Another idiot question. Can you mix gouache and watercolour? Because I've only got a tiddly watercolour pan with 1 yellow in, but I've got a different yellow in my gouache.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you can mix them up. You'll get a slightly different effect because the gouache is not see-through and the watercolour is see-through. They're both made of the same stuff. They're both water-based, so it's absolutely fine to mix them. That could be a good experiment. You could just really water the gouache down.
My gouache is very cheap, I'm afraid, off Amazon, so it's not quite as solid as
Is your watercolour palette quite good?
Yes, Winsor and Newton.
Have you just not got any? Have you just got 1 yellow in it?
Yeah, I've only got 1 yellow and burnt sienna, which would make it too brownish.
Yes, just put that yellow down then. Just stick that yellow down, Lou.
Okay, thank you.
Especially because that's quite good quality paint. So I'm just gonna, you can see it's quite runny. I've got lots of water in it, and I'm just gonna put down a really loose layer of paint onto my leaf. So this is like the underpainting. It's very free. Again, if you're a very neat person, you might want a pointy brush to go into those corners. I'm not, and I don't mind it going over the edges because I've got the structure of the skeleton of that leaf already there. So I never mind if it goes over the edge a little bit. Can you see I've left a few little gaps? There's just little bits of light coming in. That's just my own artistic preference. You could also at this stage add a few more colours in. So I want that as the undercolour, but I might just add a little bit of the red around the edges. So again, because I'm a messy person, look, my red that I'm mixing is mixing in a little bit with that yellow, but I don't really mind because that's still going to add to the effect. And I'm just going to just touch in a bit of red. It's not quite the right red, I don't think. I've run out of my alizarin crimson. Oh, there's a little bit in there. When I'm touching it onto the paper, I'm not mixing it very much. I want them to do their own mixing. And you get that really lovely sort of autumny leafy effect. I don't want to mix it too much. I don't want to put too much on there because I still want a little bit of that veining. If you feel like you've put too much on, you can rinse your brush so it's nice and clean, dab it on a bit of kitchen roll. I usually wipe mine on my trousers, don't do that, so it's a bit dry, and then you can touch your brush and take off some of the paint if you want to. Remember, this is the underpainting, so if it's not looking bright and beautiful and vibrant, doesn't matter. We've got potentially, well, we've got two more layers to do. Remember, we've got 3 layers, but you can add 5 layers, up to 5 layers onto a lot of these. I'm just going to touch it with a little bit more there, and I'm going to leave that. I can see it already, this is sort of creeping in. I might have put a little bit too much in because I still want this veining to show through, but anyway, I might have overdone it. We'll see. Whilst I wait for that to dry, I'm just going to do the same thing on this bigger leaf. So I'll just tip that so you can see it without the shine on it. So you can see it's no mixing, it's just putting wet paint into wet paint. The one thing to remember about watercolour is that if you want soft edges, so if you want, I mean, that's why it's brilliant for a leaf, for these autumn leaves, where there's very soft blending of colours, you always want the watercolour to be wet. If you want to create really fine definition and do lots of tiny details, you need it to be completely dry. So we're going to be working towards that with our watercolours. So if there's harsh lines in this now, and you think, oh, you know, it's probably just dried out a little bit, you can always add a little bit of water and muzzy it up a little bit and make the lines softer. I'm a bit bad at fiddling with these when they're wet, and you really shouldn't. You're supposed to leave them to dry. So I'm looking at this one, and I'm again looking at the lighter undercolour, which also is a yellow. So I'm going to go in and do this one. This is why this one could be interesting, having these two. I might just try a different yellow just to get a bit of difference going on. So I'm going to try, I've got like a yellow oak. No, I might go Naples yellow. Just testing out. This is a nice way to get to know your watercolour palette. Let's try Naples yellow. Bit lighter, and I might just stick a little bit of that other one in there. See how that affects it. Again, I'm just washing over. I've always got the water. Remember, it is watercolour, so I'm just showing you now. Look, you can just see how runny my watercolour is. You really want it to do its business and work the colours into each other, and you can't do that if the watercolour is dry. So this is stage 1, messy stage. You can really throw loads of colours into these leaves at this stage as well. So I can see at the corner of this leaf, there's a few little touches of green. And I think at this stage, it would be good to add some of those little greens and let them seep in. There's a bit of green there as well. Some sketchy watercolor artists just use the structure of the drawing as a skeleton underneath and literally splatter and make a really lovely mess on top of it, of all the colours that they can see in the leaf. In fact, a little bit of splattering at this stage can look really effective. So we'll do a bit of splattered yellow. So I've got a bit of paint on my brush and I'm just going to tap it on my finger. It adds real energy to a sketch. And it's not going to cause too many problems with this because any little drips are just going to get reabsorbed back into that piece. Whilst it's still wet, I might just stick in a bit of those warmer colours too, because I want them to mix in. You can't really go wrong, because even if the colours aren't 100% right, it's still going to look beautiful. And it doesn't matter if they don't look right, really, does it? We're just trying to express nature's verdant bounty. I don't know where that came from. We don't talk in them book and words around here. I've been watching too much Nigella, that's the problem.
I think you should tell them about your live drawing class you did last week.
What are your views on the double buttering? That's become an international crisis.
I was listening to them on the radio talking about Nigella's double buttering.
Oh.
And I think she did something else like it recently, didn't she? When she just put avocado on toast with some radishes, and people were outraged that she'd done that on a cookery programme. I think it is a work of art, a piece of toast. And if that's how she wants to do it, I'm interested, and I'm glad that she's shown us her method. I think it's potentially a heart attack on a piece of toast, but I do know a few people that cut butter like cheese and eat it on toast like that.
Guilty.
Is that
suffering from cholesterol? I've discovered.
So would you try double buttering now?
No, now I get a feeling of guilt every time I look at butter.
Oh, it's miserable, isn't it? Because it tastes so good. Tastes so good.
Yeah.
Right, I've just been fiddling around with that, as you can probably see. Whilst it's still wet, you can see, I mean, it's perfect for you guys to see because you get this glare, which is a sheen of wetness. And whenever you've got that sheen of wetness on your watercolour, you can keep adding colour to it and it will blend and bleed into each other. So if that's the effect you're looking for, keep going whilst you've got that sheen. The more it dries, the more effects you'll get. And I think that using watercolour is kind of like learning to read the water and what your watercolour will do with the drying time. It's a bit of a funny old art because watercolour will react differently with different types of paper. It will react differently with the brush that you're using. So it's about sort of, and all different colours all different pigments have different characters. So it is quite a difficult medium, but I like it because like I said, I'm quite messy and I like the unpredictability of that. I've just realised I've forgotten to paint the stem, using a bit of a big brush to do it. whilst that stem is wet, I'm just going to, with a slightly smaller brush, you can see I was using a very big brush. I would think that's probably about a size 8. And because we're doing, like I said, the messy stage, it's okay, you know, you want to get a big coverage. I've just sort of touched the base of that stem that I've just painted, and I'm mixing just a slightly darker red, just touching that base there. I'm going to go back in and do the dark bits, but I just thought I'd do that. I just felt like it needed it at this stage. So we've on 2 leaves now, we've got this first stage down. I'm just going to, I'm buying a bit of time because to do the next stage, this one needs to be dry. So this is why I'm working around 3 leaves. If you're just doing, you're not doing this on a Zoom tutorial and you're just doing it at home, you can obviously give it a blast with a hairdryer, which does affect, I think, the overall look, but it's quite useful if you want it to hurry up. Or you can just leave it to dry naturally, just have a cup of tea between stages. I'm just going to whiz down another colour onto this one. That was my, oh, that was the gouache version. So that, should we do a watercolour version of that little oak leaf? I've lost it now. Here it is. So unfortunately, this poor little leaf, I picked this off the tree. And the reason I picked it was because it had beautiful green veining, which has now disappeared. So you've probably all found that with your leaves. I did it here, painted it there and cut through it, look, but you can see it did have quite nice veining. So I'm going to honour that and again put my yellow base down. Most leaves will start off with this in autumn, but you might find that perhaps they've got a greenier yellow. But really, like I said, the 3 colours that you need are just primary colours. You can have a go at mixing the greens with the blue and the yellow, mixing the oranges with the yellow and the red. Whilst that's still a bit damp, I'm going to stick in a bit of green. But I'll tell you what, because I've been talking about colour mixing, I'll just mix the green. So I've already got my yellow there. Back to primary school, everybody. Yellow and blue. We've got a green, so I'll put my blue down nearby to the yellow. And the blue is quite dominant, so I'm just going to sort of put a little bit in and see what I get. It's quite a nice green. So I'm going to use that. It's always going to work because it's already got a little bit of that yellow in it. Like I said, we can't see the green on here. I'm just imagining how it was like when I first picked it. And there was green just down the centre. So there's my green down the centre. That could be the first stage done of that leaf, which was very quick, wasn't it? But I think because I'm a bit of a fiddler, I might just stick a little bit of the brown around the edges and see what happens with that and the water. I just don't know. And by the way, you can, if you haven't got a brown in your paint set, and again, you're being very good with just having 3 colours. In fact, let's do that if we stick with the primaries. So I've got my blue there and I've got my yellow. So the other primary is obviously red, and that's going to add a nice bit of warmth. If we put all 3 of those together, we're going to get a brown. if you add them all in perfectly equal quantities, you will get a beautiful grey. Oh, done that in the wrong place. Actually, we'll just leave it. We'll leave it. I've just spotted the time, everybody, and we're going to run over today. We've never done that before, I don't think. We've got so much to cover. So if you need to go, that's fine. We're going to just be finishing off doing the other layers, which are quite quick, and I'll show you the little folding technique. So if you do need to go, don't worry, because I'll send you the vid, but if you're happy to stay, we'll just be going for another sort of 10 minutes.
Lucy, you show us the shading as well?
Yes, I will, yeah. So the shadowing, is that what you mean?
Yeah, the shadowing.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, of course. So you can see the difference now when I've got a really wet one like this, and then these have dried. I really love the way they've dried, and I always, it doesn't matter how many watercolors I do or how many leaves I do, when I do them and they're wet, I always think they look rubbish. So it's worth, I think, just not fiddling with it and just leaving it to dry, and then enjoying the texture of what that creates, and then working with that. So I didn't like either of these, and now I'm finding them really quite interesting. They're dry now, so I'm going to go in with the second layer. So there's first layer. The second layer, we're going to go a little bit more detailed. And what I want to get on this second layer with this leaf is a bit of this green in and a bit of the red on top. But I want to leave some of this yellow underneath. I want it to poke through. So I'm dropping my big brush now, my really big wodgy brush, and I'm going in with a slightly smaller brush. It's still not that small. I don't want to get too detailed.
Lucia, does it have to be bone dry to do the next layer?
Well,
can it be a little bit damp?
It could be a bit damp. It will affect the effect, basically. So remember I said when you've got a wet surface, the line that you get will be very soft. When you have a completely dry surface, the line will be sharp, so you can get much more definition. So yours, you just might not get as much definition if you put it in when it's just slightly damp. But that might be, again, it's another interesting effect. So I'm just looking at the leaf. I think that's not quite the right red. Like I said, it doesn't have to be bang on. I'm just trying to, I think that's a slightly better red, but they can kind of mix up together, and then it's not right out the box. Some reds, some colours you'll see will have, well, they'll all have a temperature. So some reds might be warmer and some reds might be colder. And I think I'd call that a cold red. I've got a bit of green there as well. So now I'm gonna, I've just put my hand in that one. And just see if I can get this all in one place without putting my hand in the other piece of work. So I might have to do this at a bit of a funny angle. Right, so picking up a bit of my red, and I'm just carefully looking at it, and I'm adding now that next stage, but being a bit more careful. Adding a little bit more detail. So remember, each stage that goes through, we're refining it a bit more and a bit more. I'm able to get some sharp little edges on this leaf. And I'm retaining a bit of that veining underneath, so that colour's going to show through. And you can see, actually you can't see because it's still a bit shiny. Let's go close up. It's almost impossible to do watercolour with the shine. You can see on there, I'm getting quite a fine line, a bit more detail, less merging. But if I feel that it's a bit too fine, I can always just bring in a little bit of water and soften those edges a bit in the places where I want them. I honestly think this is more difficult than doing, actually, no, I can't say that with all the calligraphers on this call. I have taught calligraphy on Zoom. I don't seem to get quite as much of a shine on the ink as I do on watercolour. So I'm just looking for what would be that next stage darker tone, that lovely red. I'm painting now the bits that I can see rather than the bits before we were painting the bits that were hidden underneath. A bit hard to explain, really. I hope that makes sense. If you've got little areas that you feel you've done it wrong, you can always just dab a bit to take it off. I only did a little, I'm not too worried about if it goes wrong, but I felt that we need to get a bit of this green in. So I'm just going to touch that into it. Remember when it's wet. Again, as I always say, I'm not sure if I've never done a botanical watercolour class or ever learnt watercolours properly. It's all stuff that I've made up or read places. But I think this probably would be, I don't know if this would be considered the wrong way to do something. But it's the way that I like to do it. I feel like I'm doing this a bit more detailed than I would if I was actually painting this myself. I think I'd probably be a bit more messy. So I'm just picking up a bit of the green as well. Green and red, if you look on the little colour wheel, like I said, you can print it off the website if you want it straight away, otherwise I'll send it to you tomorrow. Green and red are opposite each other on the colour wheel, which means that they are complementaries. And if you mix them together, you'll get a brown. So that's what will happen if you start wiggling these colours around, the red and the green. I do just love dropping in these colours and letting them join up with each other. Not fiddling with them too much so that they go all murky. I hope all of yours are going okay. But like I said, I feel every time I do a leaf, I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go, whether it's going to look exactly like the leaf. Actually, I don't really want it to. I've never been one for doing the whole photorealistic art thing. I really like there to be an element of hand of the artist in there. I don't like perfectionism. It doesn't interest me when I'm looking at a piece of art if it could look like someone's taken a photo of it. I'd rather look at a photo. What I want to see is an element of expression, a bit of fun. Oh, sorry, this has gone out of focus again. So let me try and show you that without the sheen. So that would be my stage 2. Of that one. Now let me just, conscious of the time, what I'm going to do is I'll just do the stage 2 of this one, which means that this one will be dry enough to then just show you the shadowing technique, if that's all right with everybody. But I will just keep going anyway, even if you will drop off the end of the earth, and then at least you've got the video. So same goes for this one. I'm going to do this one in a bigger brush just so that I can get it done a bit quicker.
When you say bigger brush, sorry, it's Lou. Do you mean 8 again?
Yeah, just going back to my biggie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There we go. Yeah, so I'm just going to pick up. So I'm going to do this a bit more rapid. I'm going to just, sorry. A bit more rapid, adding these colours in, so I can go for a bit of definition. What this does, adding these extra layers, is it makes the difference between your watercolours being a bit insipid and them to have a real pop and a real bang. And that's the thing that I see in other people's watercolours that I think is a problem, is the kind of watercolours dry about 3 times lighter than they start off. So it's good to be bold at this stage. But if you've done one layer and it's just not looking bright, then just knowing that you can go back over and add some of these other, another layer of colour, another layer of pop. So I've got that lovely little band there of. So I've just cleaned my brush now, and I've got a clean brush, and I'm going to soften those edges. Like we did with the gouache, you could always, if you've got nice pencils, you could go back in with this, with coloured pencils, and bring in some of the detail if you wanted to. Whilst this is still wet, I'll just show you stage 3, which would be mixing a dark colour. So if you've got a red, you can add a bit of green to it and it will make it darker. And where there's little dark elements, I'm just going to touch the dark in and add those little dark tips. When it's completely dry, the other part of stage 3 that I do with this one would be perhaps to add a tiny bit of veining. You remember, we can only do that really refined look when it's 100% dry. You can only get that lovely strong definition. So it's going to be a while before this one's dry because there's loads of water in it. But you get the gist of then just adding some of these darker tones in. So before we go, let me just quickly show you the shadows because they look so effective, and then you can all go carry on with your wine to go back to bed. So have a look on this one here. You can see there's quite a few shadows. It's only when you look really closely that you can You kind of don't see them to start with, and then when they're pointed out, it makes it look like the leaves are resting on your sketchbook. So it's a really effective technique, but it's really super easy. So here's another little example of very pale shadows. And the other thing that's tricky about this is that you need them to be completely dry to put your shadows on. So again, tricky on a little Zoom workshop, but we'll give it a go. In fact, what I'll do is I'll do it with this one that's not finished, and then it's not going to bleed too badly. So you might find when you've got a leaf resting on the table, or even on these images, there's a few shadows. Look, you can draw in that shadow that you see. So you could draw a little outline to give yourself a bit of a guide. Generally, I just don't bother unless I'm sat there drawing from life and I've got the leaves on the table and there's a beautiful light coming in and a gorgeous shadow. I will always sort of draw that shadow shape and just paint it. But for now, I'll just show you a basic shadow shape. So obviously, if the light is coming in from this direction, the shadow is going to be here. There is a nice little thing that happens with the stalks and stems of leaves, which I'll show you, which really adds to the shadow. But first of all, we'll just mix up a grey. So on the colour wheel, most colours that are opposite each other, so green and red, orange and blue, purple and yellow, when you mix them together, they will make a grey. You have to, if they're mixed in exact quantities, that is, so you might have to add a little bit more of each one. My perfect greys are with blues and oranges. I particularly like ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. I tend to go a bit more on the blue. Purples make lovely shadows. Just blue could be a shadow, just ultramarine blue. So it's mostly blue. And then I've got a bit of burnt sienna there, so I'm going to just bring that in. And because this works, because that's a bit orangey, so it's like its opposite on the colour wheel. You can see that's just starting to make quite a nice grey. I'm going to add a little bit more blue in. I like my shadows to be a little bit more bluer. So like I said, if you, let's say there was a sort of a shadow that had been created like that. That's the one you could see. That's all you do, is just make sure it's completely dry and just carefully paint that shadow in. I did read a book about watercolours once, and I remember one particular thing about it, which was that if you did shadows on anything on a sunny day, if you add a little bit of purple into the shadow, it makes it look, for some reason, like a particularly sunny day. So you can experiment with shadow colours, earth colours like yellow ochre. And
Lucia, are you leaving a tiny line of white in between the leaf and the shadow, or are you going right up to the edge?
I'm going right up to the edge. I'm just, I was just doing it at a bit of a funny angle. I'm always turning my work as well. Yeah, go right up to the edge. And again, so the little stem of the leaf just kind of curls like that. If you had one sat on a table, I could show you an example of that. And again, when I do the shadow, it always looks rubbish. And then when it dries, and I think, oh God, I've really messed that up. When it dries, it's absolutely fine. So all of these shadows were all rubbish. And they've just dried much paler. And I'm pleased with them. I love the way the shadows look. When I do them, I always think, oh God, I've messed that up adding that shadow. And then when they dry, I think, no, it was definitely the right thing to do. So so that's all you do. Yeah, you just, it was probably the easiest part of the whole leaf is the shadow, and it's the most effective part of the leaf as well. Is there any questions at this stage about that? So I think it really is a case of experimenting with your leaf shapes and experimenting with this layer system of getting darker and darker and darker, starting with your lightest colour, adding the next stage of darkness, and then the very last stage going in and adding tiny little flecks, little dots, tiny edges, details to the stem. Thinking of it in 3 stages will be the most effective method for getting that sort of effective look. So you can see just on this one here, you can see on this hawthorn just where there's some little dots. So remember, that needs to be completely dry to add those little dots, to add veining. And that would have been my stage 3, those very, very dark browns. This is almost a good example. Well, it's a good example of 3 stages: the light yellow, the greens, and then adding much more detail with the dark browns. Just very briefly, before you go, I'll just talk to you literally for a minute about this folding technique. So you've got it. So if you decide to make a little sketchbook and do this on a piece of paper, all you need to do is, once you've got your finished design, is fold your piece of paper in half one way and open it out. And then fold it in half, make sure the 2 lines marry up.
And you're not painting to end up with a picture on each page, are you? You're painting any reference to the pages.
Yeah. So what I normally do is I would paint a whole page first.
Yep.
And then I would fold it all up and make it into a book. You could make the book first and then paint on each page.
Yep.
So you've got the instructions for this, but I just thought it's worth sticking it on the vid. So we folded it in half, folded it in half again, and opened them all out. So you've got a little cross of a window. Fold one side to the centre. And the other one. And then you've got your, you should have 8 little sections. So then fold it in half and just cut down the 2 middle sections. And then you've got a little gap. So if you just push those 2 sides together, open it out and squeeze, you'll get a little star, and then that makes your little book. So this is called a zine, so you can Google zines and you can do all different cuts for these. It's the basic principle is you do these little folds and you get a what's called a 1-page book.
How do you spell that, Lucia?
Zine, as in the end, it's the last 4 letters of magazine, so it's short for magazine, Z-I-N-E. Okay, so this is one type of folding a zine. There are about 100 different ways of folding and cutting one piece of paper to turn it into a book, and this is one of them. The other one that I use a lot is the trouser technique. So if you look, Can you see this is like a little pair of trousers? Well, that's that way up. So all I've done is with this zine, I've just cut all the way down and I've left one section. So it's like a pair of trousers. So there's my original zine. I've just cut that extra little bit. And it means that this can now fold up like that and in half, and it becomes a little book. And what's interesting about these little books is that, again, in the sort of randomness, you don't know what parts of the leaves can be seen when you start cutting. So it becomes a bit of a mystery and a bit of a journey. You can turn it around the other way and explore it the other way. I'm excited about this idea of not knowing how something turns out. So this is like right up my street. You can fold them loads if you've got a little piece of paper, and you can do like little zigzag ones that run all around, and it makes this complicated concertina. But this is sort of the basic one, and I love this trouser fold. So it's worth having a go. Like I said, this could just be a plain book, and you could use it now to just illustrate a leaf on each page. You could stick it in an envelope and stick it in your sketchbook, or give it to your best friend and say, happy autumn, have a lovely time. So is there any questions about, oh, the other thing is, yeah, it can stand up beautifully like that. So it would be a nice little card for somebody. Are there any questions about the folding? I mean, it's really simple. You've got some instructions, and you'll have this video too. But I love making these zines, because you could just have a page full of paint splatters and marks and cut it up and make a lovely little zine and stick little words and poems and stuff on it. But that's a really good method. It's great for kids as well. So any more questions on leafy watercolors, or are you all happy to sort of go away and have a go? Yeah, good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So next week, we've got these little bad boys. Oh, teeny tiny typewriters. I've got Nigella to Grant Mitchell. I like that, teeny tiny typewriters. Gone all Cockney. So we're doing lots of these little tiny typewriters. Again, an elemental project, but that can be made into a really big, lovely sketchbook project. So really messy, really lovely, and this will hone some more of the very similar techniques that we've used, but in a slightly different way. So it's a good, if you're into watercolors, this is another good little practice for you.
Could you tell us where the little stamps you were using? Was it Dove Cottage?
Dovecraft.
Dovecraft.
Yeah, Dovecraft. Yeah.
Could you put that in your email, because I'll forget.
Definitely, yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll put the name of that noticing book as well, because I think that would be a good Christmas present for everybody. If you do a few leaves and you really like the look of them, or that you don't like the look of them, email them to me and show me. If you've done a few, stick them on Instagram and Facebook if you do that sort of thing, and tag me in so I can have a look. If you're having a bit of a nightmare and they're perhaps not turning out the way that you want them to, just email me and then I can have a look at them and assist you. Some of them will turn out better than others, and it is a case of experimenting, and you'll find some leaves are just a joy to do and others you think a bit meh. But good luck everybody, and have fun.
Can I show you now, because I'm not very good at Facebook and all that?
Yes, please. Hang on a minute, Lou.
I've only done 2 layers though, because my paper was so wet.
Can everybody see Lou's?
Yeah.
I think I've spotted that. Hang on, I'm going to stop there.
Lovely.
And bottom left is my kiddie's ivy print.
Oh, it's lovely.
In the back. Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Fantastic. Anyone else fancy showing a...
Well, I did a worksheet, so.
Oh, hang on a minute.
Amazing.
I did it as a worksheet, so I was doing
Oh, wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
Very nice.
And so, Anne, will you use that to refer to?
I'd probably redo it. But,
Yeah.
Yeah, but something that like that, I like the idea of.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And it means that you're still doing something during the workshop, but that you can then go away and potter around with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, Anne. Hang on a minute. I've got to oh, hang on, I've lost Anne. And I've got to unspotlight her. Oh, hang on a minute. Sorry, Anne.
It's all right.
So I'm a bit of a slowie at the tech. So hold bits up, everybody, if you... Oh, lovely. Thanks, Caroline. I'll just... Oh, beautiful.
Wow.
Lovely.
Wow.
Oh, wow, look at that one. Oh,
Gorgeous.
beautiful. Yeah, lovely.
Beautiful. I love the colours you've used, Caroline. We can't hear you. You're muted. But they're really lovely. Sorry, Caroline. I know this is a nightmare, isn't it, like that? But it's really, I'm really glad that we can still see your work. So bear with. So we've got Colin.
Right.
Oh, Colin, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
I love all your splatters.
It's the first time I've done those, so that was great. Nice to be given permission.
It is. And I think that's the thing sometimes, isn't it? If someone says you can do it, even though you know you can, you do need that permission sometimes, don't you? That's lovely. Thank you, Colin. And Alison White. Oh, look at that. Oh, I love the colour mixes that you've got, Alison. They're beautiful. You've done quite a bit of watercolour before, haven't you? Sorry, there she goes. She's unmuting herself. And I just wondered, is this a similar technique? Oh, she can't talk.
Yeah, I've done one watercolour before, so yes, it has similar.
Similar, yeah. Lovely. Well, they're beautiful. Really.
Is the one bottom left for us looking at it? Is that your leaf print? Splodgy one.
That's the leaf print. Oops, that's the leaf print, and that's the leaf print.
Ah, they're so different.
Yeah, and very effective. Whatever leaf you used there was very effective.
I think it was beech, I think.
Beautiful. Thanks, Alison. Anyone else? Just feel free to hold up and I'll...
Okay, because I'm going to have to go now, so...
Oh, which one are you? Who's talking now? Who's got to go?
Christine.
Christine, just quickly to you then, Christine. Let's have a quick look.
Yeah, I don't know if you can...
Oh, beautiful. Oh, your shadows look amazing.
So I did different leaves, so
yeah,
that's why they look a bit different to yours.
Yeah, they're beautiful. The colour blends are lovely.
Fantastic work. Yeah, thank you very much.
Pleasure, and thank you for coming.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Anyone else like to show it? Feel free if you need to go, please do. But I do love seeing everybody's work, and it's really nice for it to go on the video. So Anne-Marie.
That's my very first. I'm covering one that went wrong.
Yeah.
Very first ever use of watercolors. So
well done.
I'm quite pleased with those. So
you should be pleased with them. The colors are stunning, and the shapes that you've drawn are fantastic.
No, it was just I'm got in a bit of a muddle with my browns on the oak leaf, but never mind.
That's all right. But it's like I said before, we're on you never do your best work on a workshop because you're just sort of pottering through and finding things out. But now you can go away and work through these little techniques and see what you can find. But they are really beautiful. And the red and the green on that leaf just look fantastic.
Those two were prints, so they were just...
Yeah.
And I've got one left to do, so to colour, so I'll have another go.
Yeah, keep going, keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more that would like to have a show? We've got Jan Turner. Oh, lovely, Jack. Oh gosh, aren't they beautiful? Shadowing looks really effective. The dark parts of that one down the bottom are really effective. You've got the tones just right there.
Not finished yet, but yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. It's really interesting, I think, isn't it, to be able to do this and to be able to see how other people are approaching exactly the same thing. Anybody else like to have a little show? Oh, Emma, thank you so much for showing. There we go. Oh, I've gone to, oh no, there we go. Oh, Emma, that's beautiful.
I don't know if you can, how well you can see it. My light's not very good.
I can see it, it's lovely. You've got some beautiful blends there, and I love the detail that you've added.
Thank you. I've got, like Lou, I've got some 30-year-old Karen dashes, so I did a layer of watercolour and then a bit of that on top of this one over here.
It's always
that's a good tip. I'll try that.
Yeah.
It's always worth getting them back out again, I think. It's lovely,
Yeah.
really, really beautiful work. Really
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for showing that. Liz. There we go, Liz. Oh, wow, gorgeous. Gosh, there's the one that you've added the shadow to, Liz, really, really stands out. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah,
so lots of fun. It was brilliant. Thank you.
Fantastic. Lovely work. Thank you very much. And I've got to go to Dee, because sometimes, Dee, you feel a bit worried about showing your work, don't you? So
Yeah,
I feel that we've got to get you whilst you're beautiful.
Got some finishing to do, really.
Yeah. Oh, lovely.
I've just done it in my sketchbook for now.
Yeah.
Just to get the ideas.
Yeah, fantastic. And you've gone in with gouache as well there.
Yes, yeah. So
it's a really nice contrast between the one that you've done in watercolour and the one you've done in gouache.
Yeah.
It's a really nice way to see those two different experiments.
Yeah, and they are very different, aren't they, actually?
Yeah. They really are. Fantastic. Thank you for showing, Dee. Remove spotlight. Sorry, I got to do. Everybody's dropping off now. Everybody's gone back to their gins. Is there anyone else that would like to? Oh, Lisa. No. Oh, you're doing a wave goodbye. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. Anybody else like to have a little show? Don't worry if you don't want to. I completely understand. But I think we've all got. It's really nice just to see a few people's bits of work. And so I will love you and leave you now and let you get back to your beds and your books. We've had a really hard session. It's usually very much more light-hearted than this, but I think this has been pretty intense. So I think you all need to go and have a rest now and a little glass of vino.
Thank you very much. I look forward to doing it again at Christmas when I've got more time. Doing the whole workshop again. Yes.
Fantastic. Good. Nice to see you all.
Thanks very much.
Again at another workshop soon. And have a good weekend.
Thanks, Lucia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.